Welcome back to You Can Homeschool. I'm Tracy Hagerman, the happy homeschooler, and I'm here with the lovely Pat Fenner from Breakthrough Homeschooling. Today we've got a really interesting topic as we're starting out in our new year. Pat has actually become a certified coach, and so we are going to talk today about reaching your goals through coaching. So as a homeschool mom, we know that homeschooling is not just opening a book and sitting there with your child and teaching them.
That's right.
That's a piece of it, but there's so much more than homeschooling, and it usually involves almost all pieces of your life because you're with your children 24/7.
Hmm.
So I'm going to do sort of like an interview with Pat to talk a little bit about how coaching can help us as homeschool moms, and Pat's going to talk about some of the services that she provides. And also, we're going to talk about alternatives to coaching if that's not something that you can get into at this point. There are other ways to be coached. And, anyways, we'll get into that a little bit later. So, I'm just going to start out here with a few questions. And the first one, I guess, is so maybe you can just explain. Why are we talking about coaching for homeschoolers? Like,
Right. Yeah. I know because usually when we think of the concept of coaching, at least this was always my impression, you think of kids, right? And sports teams because Lord knows with 5 kids, we had plenty of coaches on sports teams. And so that was always the impression I had gotten. But then I actually spent some time with a business coach who who made me realize the benefits of coaching and how we can feel stuck and just kind of not know how to move forward. And a coach can really help with that. And I know that a lot of times, when I think back, I didn't kind of even know about, let alone embrace the concept of coaching while I was actively homeschooling. But as I went through training for certification recently, like there's situations that came up in my memory that I realized, boy, I wish I'd had a coach to that. Boy, I wish I'd had a coach to that because it would have I think it would have smoothed out the edges a little bit and it would have made me feel more confident and empowered as a homeschool mom, as a home educator. So I think that, coaching can really benefit moms when they're kind of going through struggles because sometimes it isn't the curriculum and it's not the kids. It's something that's holding us back.
and I know that coaching is a huge thing that's used for entrepreneurs
Mm,
because they're running their own business and they don't have oftentimes, someone that they're working with to help them out or to bounce things off of. So I know it's
right.
huge. And I always think of a homeschooling mom as like an entrepreneur, a manager
Yes.
who's trying to move forward. So that makes a lot of sense.
And
So
one of the reasons it's big with entrepreneurs is it's really like, as you said, a lot of them are small, small groups or just one person. And it's very helpful to get somebody who's skilled and trained, but doesn't have any skin in the game, in your game, you know, uh, to be able to step back and help you step back and look at your business and maybe your struggles and your challenges with fresh eyes. A lot of times this is, harkening back to an episode we did about how we homeschool moms say we only homeschool or I'm just a homeschooler. And, even those attitudes towards what we do and who we are can really hold us back from being effective home educators, which, you know, to play that out further then can limit how we can benefit our kids. Not that we are ruining them or, I'm not trying to put any guilt trips on us. But we're always, I would hope you're always looking to, how you can be better, how you can improve things, how you can better serve your kids. And sometimes coaching is a ticket. It doesn't have to be long term either. It can be very specific to help you through like a certain struggle or something.
okay, interesting. So I hear things about coaching and consulting.
Mm.
And I think sometimes people use them, they interchange the names, but there is a big difference between coaching and consulting. So maybe you can explain that to us.
Yes, and actually, I'm going to add a third C there, counseling. And just imagine them kind of as three circles. I always love Venn diagrams. So, like, let's picture this as a Venn diagram. So, first, to kind of explain our terms, like, consulting is very specific. If you are specifically looking for a math program or science program or something like that, you will want to talk to somebody who's, maybe have some experience or trained or professional in curriculum. And a lot of catalogs that have gone online now have curriculum specialists that you can talk to, and that's very specific for a product kind of thing. A coach, well, let's go into counseling, of course, deals with our past, right? And why we feel the way we do, and what messages we're telling ourselves, and how maybe our childhood could be impacting what we're doing or how we're feeling today. A coach can take some of that from the counseling part, but a coach looks forward. So counseling kind of looks backward to see how you got to where you are today. And there is a bit of, forward options. How else could you handle things and things like that? But coaching primarily focuses on the forward. So we may think about why we're struggling with a certain particular topic, but it's always forward thinking. Well, what can you do? Okay, what's something that you can do this week? And it can be very bite sized, because sometimes change is hard for us, and we might have this ideal of what's the perfect solution to our problem, but it feels so far away. And how do we get there? So coaching helps us to kind of put it into bite sized, manageable steps that we can accomplish, and that kind of steamrolls, right? Because you accomplish one step and you're feeling a little more empowered and able and capable. So they'll go back, and what's the next step we can do? What's the next step we can do? And so you are kind of incorporating a little bit of, perhaps like negative messages you're telling yourself that that are prohibiting you from moving forward. But you're not falling into the victim mode. It's always the counselor's approach. A good coach's approach should always be that you are the hero of this story. You are the expert on you. You know what's best. A coach will not tell you, okay, this is your homework this week. This is what you have to do. A coach will ask you, what is something that you see that's manageable? What's one step you can take this week? And then keep you accountable to that. So sometimes and it might be a struggle that you're having with a math program. Why are you struggling with that? You might find out in counseling, you got a lot of negativity in your life towards you as a child for math. You felt stupid, and people told you, oh, you'll never be a success or whatever. So now that you have to teach math, you've got all those negative messages, coming in, but they don't have to stop you. You can still move forward. So, some you can move around those circles and in the Venn diagram, and sometimes there are issues that overlap, but coaching is always going to be looking forward. So.
And I think what you were saying there about the hero is the person being coached. So they're the hero. So they're the ones basically finding the solution. And if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that basically the coach is the one who asks the right questions to get them on the right path, moving them forward. But they don't answer those questions for them. Okay.
Right.
Exactly.
And the other thing that's important too are the type of questions that they ask, because we tend to ask ourselves, especially when we start getting into a negative spiral, why questions. Why do I always do this? Why can't I seem to get over this problem? Why does this come up again? Why? And I'm sure there's psychology behind it that I don't know right now, but why questions tend to have a negative connotation for us, especially when we're asking them of ourselves. We never ask ourselves, gee, why do I always succeed at this? Why, it's always the negative. So a good coach will avoid why questions. It's, what can you do? Where's your next step? How, all the other ones except why, you can avoid why questions, because they tend to come with like negative baggage, and they're not very productive usually, because we don't often know the answer to those why questions we ask ourselves. And even if we did, it doesn't always help us move forward.
Right.
So,
It reminds me of the child who's 5 years old and keeps coming back and say, I need you to do this, but why? And why? And why? And it just goes on and on and on. So I guess it means that as we become adults, yeah, the why isn't very useful, is it?
that's
It's
right.
how or what or when or
Yeah, definitely.
that makes sense. So can you give us an example of when a homeschool mom might need coaching?
Right, right. Well, uh, the definitely the math curriculum was an example of how you could pull in the different aspects. But suppose you're frustrated with your kid's behavior and you just are having you're just struggling. Now some of it can be, if you have teenagers, you're definitely relating to this question, but sometimes with younger kids as well. And you're just feeling stuck. You don't know what to do. What can you handle? A coach can help you see, by asking clarifying questions. One question that I might ask is, if you had a magic wand, how would the resolved situation look to you? And and that can really give you just, and that gives you permission to just go ahead and, just paint a picture. It doesn't, don't edit yourself, don't limit yourself. Go ahead and just think of what would the perfect outcome be. And it's very interesting to see how you start on that. Let's use that particular subject. And sometimes our expectations, we discover ourselves, no one has to tell us this, we discover it as we discuss it, that our expectations are unreal. Sometimes we have unreal expectations, especially, I'm considering this topic. Okay. And so an effective coach would start asking questions like, well, how did you come up with that? Are there examples in your life that this happened? Because, and which will connect us to the fact that, well, maybe we're not being quite reasonable. What else is going on in your life right now that can cause you to be frustrated? Because sometimes we're frustrated with our kids, but we're really kind of projecting on them. We're feeling stuck, or we're feeling, something's going on personally or inside, or maybe with our spouses. And we're kind of projecting that on our kids. And once we realize that, once we talk this through enough, we often get an aha moment and realize, okay, well, this is just to be expected. I'm a little stressed out, or, my husband and I had a fight last night, and so I'm a little frustrated about that. And that's what's going on. It's really not the kid's behavior. So, and then we can move on. Then it's not the big block that we make it out to be, because sometimes when we talk it out and have someone else ask us productive questions and telling questions, and questions that pull out the real issue in us, we can see that, yeah, no, this situation is manageable, and I can do this, take this step this week and start working through it.
Okay. So if I'm a homeschool mom and I'm feeling, I'm working with my kids, things are going along, but I'm feeling certain frustrations in that, how do I know it's time to reach out for coaching?
That's an excellent question. Yes. Uh, I think it's important for us to be self-aware, and honestly, that's a big step, because so many of us, and myself included, there's times that we reach a frustration level and we'll just pick up our phone and we'll kind of self-medicate with technology. Rather than think about how I'm feeling and what's going on, I'm just going to scroll through, Instagram, or see what's going on Facebook with my friends. And and so we are so out of tune and out of touch with ourselves and our feelings and emotions and what's going on, because we tend to dull them with technology. So I think, step one, and it's not a direct answer, because there's no overnight, snap answer to that, but I think it starts with really being aware of yourself, your feelings, how you're reacting to things on a moment by moment basis. And sometimes, when we were in training, one of my we had peer coaching, and one of the women that I worked with said she would periodically during the day just put her hand on her heart which kind of made her slow down. It was very intentional, putting your hand up here and asking yourself, hey, what's going on right now? What are you feeling? Because she had been so out of touch and out of connection. And sometimes it's, hey, I'm feeling good right now. Or, oh, I'm feeling a little frustrated. Like, just call it out. And if you're frustrated, what's making you frustrated? If you're feeling good, hey, what just happened that's making me excited or making me forward thinking, thinking about something that's coming up or whatever. And just get into the habit of checking in with yourself. And then if you begin to see patterns, or you will begin to see patterns, and if you see something negative that keeps cropping up, the kids misbehaved again, I'm feeling stressed out. And if that becomes a pattern, then it might be something that you want to find coaching for, just to so you don't stay stuck there, because it's not healthy to stay stuck.
And is coaching something that someone does like long term, short term, by the week? How does that all work?
Yeah, well, ideally, it's really not. It's not a long term. It's like you don't need years of, like, you might need years of therapy. You don't need years of coaching. It is good, and it's financially challenging for homeschool parents. To do anything that you have to pay extra for, right, for long term. But when you're finding yourself, if for example you're doing that self check in and you're finding that there's something that is that keeps coming up, that would be a time to do that. And you really, ideally, with a good coach, should, I don't know, 4 weeks. Usually that's like the kind of packages that the services that I offer are 4 weeks at a time. And really, 4 weeks should be good. Should be good. Of course, you don't want to put the pressure on yourself, but very often, if you find yourself that you need more than 4 or 6 weeks, it might be an issue that you'd want to bring to a counselor, and to get fine tuned, more specific training on that.
Okay, that's really helpful because, yeah, the first thing I think is like, yeah, I know this is an issue, but oh, I don't, a lot of times homeschooling families are on one income, or more recently, maybe the mom is having some kind of side hustle or part-time job that they're doing as well. And, between trying to fit it in
Mm-hmm.
and the cost, that's always a consideration. So
Absolutely.
that is that's very positive when I think about that. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
potentially in 4 weeks I could have,
Yeah, some
move
clarity.
through this stage kind of thing. Okay.
Exactly.
So
Which,
sorry, go ahead, Pat.
no, go ahead.
You were, I think, alluding a bit to the concept of self-coaching.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you can explain that a little bit as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Yeah, 'cause there are alternatives now. There are other options that you could look at, alternatives. Now, my only caveat in recommending that is, a coach is really trained to ask leading questions, and very often, we can self coach. We can have excuse me, have an accountability partner if we are able to, once we're able to figure out what steps we need to take to move forward, we can ask someone to be accountable to us, or for us. But but you can self coach, and it really, what I would recommend in that case, it would be to go ahead and put the make the investment in starting out with a coach, so that you can start developing a bank of questions that you can use for yourself. uh, because it's very important. The most important thing about coaching is the type of questions that you ask yourself. So you don't want to be asking yourself questions that are going to be putting you back in that negative spiral. You need to be moving forward. The flip side is, some of us type A's might be giving ourselves these, long list of things to do this week, steps to take. Same here, I'm guilty, that are unreasonable. And then the result again is we're feeling bad about ourselves. So we might feel stupid telling ourselves, okay, here's an example of, like, with one person that I was coaching with during training. His assignment that week, he decided this, we came to this together, but he came up with this, was he was going to look up 3 websites where he could upload designs that he was doing. He was feeling stuck. He was a creative and feeling stuck with that. That was it. 3 websites. He didn't have to look into the websites. He didn't have to find out how to upload things. He was trying to open up a store online. He didn't have to look up any of that stuff associated with just 3 websites that he was going to further pursue in his next step. We might feel stupid giving ourselves that, it's okay. I'm just going to do this one thing this week, but the point of that is when you decide to do that with someone else and you get the feedback that yeah, that's a logical next step. That sounds good. It empowers you. You start, well, yeah, okay, I got that done. I set that goal up for myself and I did it. But when you give it to yourself without any feedback, sometimes we feel a little foolish. So there are, pros and cons, but self-coaching is something that really you can use once you've got a bank of questions that are productive and that will help you move forward and see what might be blocking you. Yeah, that's something that really is a good habit to get into, because I find that it helps us stay out of that negative spiral. If our go-to response is, how am I going to coach myself out of this, as opposed to asking ourselves, why do I always do this, or why is this still a problem, you really can head off a lot of issues.
Okay. There's two things that you said. You were talking about, the guy looking up 3 things, and I was thinking. I think for myself, I'm A-type personality, absolutely. And in coaching, I think what's nice about it is I can give myself way too much to do and feel overwhelmed, and then not get anything done because I'm
Right.
overwhelmed, or get everything done but be so frazzled because and that is also not maintainable. So I like what you said about the coach is able to sort of help you move towards realistic goals. Like that really came out to me. That's what it sounds like. The coach can do it at a pace also that makes sense and help you figure it out. Is that part?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Because we're so hard on ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves. I don't know. I'm speaking from the perspective of a homeschool mom, and that's probably who's listening today. But I think women too, in general, we're stinking hard on ourselves. I don't know. And that could be a whole nother conversation about where that stems from. But that seems to be where we are today. And so we don't want to be stuck there. That's not healthy. It's not a good place. It doesn't serve us well, and it doesn't serve the people we love and, interact with every day. It just doesn't.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Now,
Yeah.
you were talking about questions, specific questions, and the right questions to ask. Can you give us a few examples of what are some of those right questions?
Okay. Well, one of them, of course, would be, what are you feeling about whatever the situation is right now? What would be your goal? What would be your ideal way to feel once you've overcome this block? What's one step that I could take right now, or that I can do right now to try to work through this? And how do I feel about taking that step? Because one of the things that we don't ask ourselves often is how we feel about doing something. And you alluded to that, Tracy, when you said that you could give yourself a whole list to do and you might even accomplish it, and then you're exhausted after that and drained. How does that make you feel? Well, it's not great, and it's not going to be something you want to keep doing, right? So we really do need to be in touch with our feelings, even as home educators. Checking in with your feelings, that's something that you can start doing. And a question, how am I feeling about this? How am I feeling about the situation? How am I feeling about what I'm planning or hoping to do this week? Once it's accomplished, how does that make me feel? Like, I'm not trying to make this all touchy-feely, but I think sometimes we do have to go to the opposite end in order to find balance. And I think if you're not in touch with how you feel about homeschooling, about your kids, about your spouse, about what you're doing, about your role in life, in your family, in your church, in your community, if you're not in touch with those feelings, you start doing things based on what other people want or what you think other people want, and you just lose you.
Yeah, I think that's really important because I know both of us, as we transitioned from homeschool, and I know you still have one daughter that you're homeschooling, but yeah, your identity changes,
Mm-hmm.
and having that other person to sort of direct you toward like, who am I now?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds so great because it's something we have to figure out. And the other point you were making about, when I was saying, oh, I do the whole list and I feel totally frazzled. Well, the one thing I try to be really conscious of is I want to be an example to my kids, and I don't want them to see a frazzled mom. I want them to have a balanced lifestyle. And yes, there's going to be times that we're exhausted, when you have a newborn baby or whatever.
Right.
That's natural. But if that is always our lifestyle, what are we modeling for our kids? So I love that. I just think, wow, I would have loved to have had a coach through all of this. Yeah. So
I
I
think
guess, sorry, go ahead.
it really does. That's an important thing to think about too. And homeschooling is really, we always say it's so much more than just academics. I mean, and it's easy to throw that around, but it really is. It's not cliche. And your kids, because you're around them, are watching you. And so, think about when you're if you were watching someone who fell overboard on a ship and he was struggling, would you just stand there and say, gee, he really should ask for help? Or, why doesn't he ask for help? He's struggling, but he's not yelling. Like, so put you and your kids in that situation. If you are struggling, your kids are watching you. Do you want them? Now, of course, you're not going to ask for them help from them because that's not. But you want them to see you find tools and find ways to get help for yourself because you want them to see, yeah, it's appropriate, it's okay, it's healthy to ask for help when you are in a situation that you need help with, and there's no shame in it. It's a very it's taking care of yourself. It's a self-care tool to ask for help and look for help when you need it. And you want your kids to grow up doing that too, right? You don't want to see them struggle as adults and being either too proud, to ask for help or ashamed or just like, hey, you know, I can do this. I don't need help. When it's clear they do. And they'll model what they see.
Hmm.
And really, if you think about the cost of a coach to get you over a hump that you might be going through is so much like there's a bigger risk, a bigger cost that you could have by not doing it because that it ripples everything that all our decisions. And so, I think I'd rather, and honestly, like you, Tracy, I didn't have this concept. I didn't know about this. And, when I had kids at home and I was sometimes think, that situation I was in, yeah, that would have been a good idea. That would have been a good way to get over that. A lot easier, less painful and
Yeah.
productive.
Save time and
Mm-hmm.
energy and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes sense. Okay,
Yeah.
so is there anything else you wanted to share with us, Pat, about your coaching program or coaching in general?
Well, if you, yeah, I love coaching, and I was one of those people like you said earlier here that kind of confused consulting and coaching, and for many years I kind of used them interchangeably, but it was really personally beneficial to me to get that training in what coaching is and how to use that on myself and with and for others. And so have there are two packages that I offer with coaching or consulting, very different, and you can sign up. I'll leave the link in the show notes for my calendar because I do a free 30 minutes phone call. We can talk about deciding which one you might need, and that's no charge and just kind of give you a little bit of clarity with whatever your situation is. So
And if for those of you, maybe you've listened to a few of our podcasts, maybe you haven't, I just want to say Pat is one of the most, she's so good at listening. So she gets it. That's what I love about Pat. Like before we started podcasting, we started sort of as accountability buddies as we were writing books. And she could hone in so quickly on where I was stuck. Which was always really helpful. So I just want to put that in there. You're in good hands if you
oh,
do
Thank
coaching or
you.
consulting with Pat, and she's got a wealth of experience and information just waiting there. So, anyways, I hope you take advantage of that. Again, if you need it, again, it's a great thing to do.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the endorsement. This was an unpaid, unsolicited endorsement.
Yeah. So I think that's it for today. So again, we love it when you tune in to listen to our podcast. And if you are thinking of, a question or a particular type of topic that you'd like us to cover, we have SpeakPipe that you can leave us a message. We love hearing from you. So check our show notes for all the details on Pat's coaching, and hopefully we will see you or you'll hear us next week. Take care, everyone. You can
Okay.
homeschool and it could be really awesome.
Absolutely. Bye bye, everybody.